Yep, all good.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. All right. Thanks for everyone coming along. Good to see some very familiar names. And some of you might not have seen me since the conference or before that. I'm a little bit balder than before, so unfortunately, I'm losing my hair and yeah, I blame the kids a little bit, but not that much. Other things going on as well. Right. So I will just go over myself real quickly in case you don't know me. So as Allison said, currently a consultant slash mercenary. Whoever will pay me, I'll go on project for you and help you out, whatever you need. And I've also joined the New Zealand Archives Council as a member, and that was from back in September. So 15 years in the IM sector, first past president. I was co-coordinator of the conference last year with ASAM Parvika. I'm an ex-trust board member for Tamanawa, and a senior archivist at Archive Central. And going back even further, I was the archivist at Palmerston North City Library and an assistant curator and an archivist at MTG Hawke's Bay. And I've hopped on the AI bandwagon with everybody else and had chat GTP give me a little bit of a printout there of me and the golden retriever, who's my handy assistant from work from home all the time, who helps me retrieve records. And yes, with a little bit more hair there too. Just going over ARANZ membership benefits real quickly. You have the regular newsletters through Alert, annual publication through Artifacts, I'm sure, which will be have call out for articles, I'm sure, pretty soon. There's discounts for ARANZ events, so there's a RIMPA Roadshow coming up in Wellington soon. If you're interested in cybersecurity, I suggest you check that out on the ARANZ website. If you're looking to upskill, there's discounts for Open Polytechnic courses. As part of an MOU with RIMPA, you get pretty much the same benefits that RIMPA members do, as well as the same costs for any events that are going on. Great connection to the professional community, and it gives your concerns a stronger voice. And of course, you get awesome presentations like this one today and many more to come. So it's very cheap to become a member. If you're not, I suggest you look into it. All right, so aims of this presentation. So I'm just gonna do a kind of top-down approach to this, starting with the legislation, moving down to how you can actually create schedules and implement disposal and transfer actions, and then give you an example of some recent disposal actions that I did with the local council. Throughout this will be available later, both as a recording and the PowerPoint presentation. Where applicable, I've put in links so that you can follow through on them. And of course, Archives New Zealand has some really helpful resource guidelines with their A to Z guide. So I suggest you check that out if you want to do any deeper research after this presentation. And then we'll have questions and answers at the end. But feel free to put your questions into the chat as we go along. And if you have a really burning desire, I don't mind if you put your hand up and interrupt me at any point. So, all right, let's crack on. So the legislation, specifically the PRA, in regards to disposal. So it's Part 1, Section 3, and it provides for the role of the chief archivist in developing and supporting government record keeping, including making independent determinations on the disposal of public records and certain local authority archives. So what does that mean? That means no entity can dispose without authority. Now, when you usually talk to non-IM people, you say disposal and they automatically think, oh, you're going to destroy it. But usually you need to have that conversation with them that no, it means destroying, deleting, altering, or even transferring custody of records permanently. There's other words you can use there. Thesaurus is very helpful if you don't want to use dispose. So you need to have explicit approval to dispose of any records. So through your disposal authority or schedule. And if you don't have that approval, disposing of records is illegal. So if you have people trying to surreptitiously dump stuff in your TIMG blue bins, just remind them that they might get a little bit of a smack on the wrist for that. So keeping records for a minimum period of time. So within the legislation, it says as long as they are required. So that's usually in regards to your business functions and activities. And then there's no actual fixed timelines set within the PRA. And the retention is determined by an approved schedule or disposal authority. And we'll go through that a bit later, specifically the amalgam and GDA 6 and 7. So the Public Record Act allows the chief archivist to set the mandatory standards, and the specific one we have with disposal and transfer is the Information and Records Management Standard. And it states within it dispose of information and records regularly and in line with authorized disposal authorities. So this is a little bit of a picture of what not disposing of physical records looks like in the setting, as well as digitally. So with my talks with a lot of clients, it seems that the most pressing issue that's coming up in our sector is the fact that everyone seems to think that storage is unlimited. You can put everything on SharePoint and Microsoft 365, store it on OneDrive, and you don't really have to ever thinking about it again. Well, you're finding that people are probably going to come to you in a few years' time and start complaining about the costs, especially when you start going up those tiers, specifically in regards to Microsoft 365. So it's worth worrying about those things now. And that screenshot down in the bottom right is just a little bit of a picture of a previous project that I did, showing a massive amount of, not massive in the grand scheme of things, but a ridiculous amount of files that were 12 years or older. No retention and disposal done on them over that time period. And the vast majority of them, when they had R&D done on them, were either, sorry, the vast majority of them were destroyed in the end. So back to the PRA. So there's two differentials here in between central government and local government. Treated a little bit differently, not that different. The difference is a bit nuanced. A lot of people don't know this, but public offices can be audited by Archives New Zealand, but local authorities are only monitored. So you can see that every year, especially most recently, in that the annual record keeping report came out from the chief archivist this week. And that was official auditing of about 40 public offices in 2023-24, whereas local authorities have surveys sent to them. Now it is mandatory to answer those surveys and questionnaires, but you do get about a 10 to 20% non-response rate. So if you do get those surveys, please answer them, because they're very useful and you are actually meant to answer them under the PRA. So public offices versus local authorities. Public office. So the main difference between the two is public offices must transfer records sentenced as retained or older than 25 years to Archives New Zealand. Well, local authorities in most cases retain their own archival holdings. And there's different standards and guidelines can apply, although in practice all should be meeting similar or the same expectations and standards. So I've just drawn up a quick little chart there, comparing the differences between the list of protected records and the GDA 6 and 7. So I'll go over the LPR real quick. So it's covered within section 40 of the PRA. It specifies classes of local authority information, which are worthy of preservation. I've noted it's absolutely a great tool to start the identification of high value, high risk information to the local authority, especially used in conjunction with frameworks such as the Information Management Maturity Assessment. And it was last updated in March of 2024. So Algam partnered with Archives New Zealand in that and did a really thorough research into it and had a lot of feedback. And if you were part of those user groups, thanks for your feedback. It was really useful. As I understand it, I wasn't part of it, but yeah, always good. The more feedback they have, the better the outcomes usually. And then you have the GDA 6 and GDA 7. So this more applies to public offices, but local authorities can use it. And it covers the generic classics or types of information and records. So your finance and HR files, etc., for GDA 6. And then your facilitative, transitory, and short-term value records for the GDA 7. So this kind of leads on to the Algam T2 R&D schedule. So this utilizes both the LPR, GDA 6 and 7, and any relevant legislation to create an implementation schedule. So it's not just the PRA that applies to your retention and disposal. It can also be the Privacy Act, any business legislation in regards to any contracts or activities or functions that your council or public office are undertaking. It provides 18 retain and 7 destruction criteria. Personally, I like the last 2 of the retain in that they're flexible and allow you as an archivist or records keeper to make calls in regards to future worthiness of a record based upon its research value to future users. So flexible if you want to look into that. And again, the template is built to be flexible and to allow modification to suit your specific organization and its business and functions. So it allows you to adapt subclasses, add or subtract retention dates based upon the class of the record, grandfather dates. So let's say if you had an earthquake or a fire, fires were unfortunately very common back in the day. You could say if that happened in 1950, you could say any files from 1950 or earlier can actually would just automatically be retained because they're actually rare according to that date. And then you have discretionary classes as well. And that's also been updated to coincide with the list of protected records. And I believe they're also now on version 8. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's what I remember it as being, the latest one. So you have several disposal action options at your disposal here. So you have retain and destroy, your usual ones. You can transfer custody of the records either to Archives New Zealand or to another public office if you are at a public office, or from a local authority to a public office, et cetera, et cetera. You can defer your disposal actions for a justified reason. So you would need to talk to the handy folks at Archives New Zealand about that and tell them why. You can also change the record. So you can redact, anonymize, or modify while also retaining it. And then you also have discharge, which is a little bit rarer, and that you have to confirm that there's no further action is required under a schedule or disposal authority. Now, the big one here is that every disposal action must be authorized and documented. So no action should happen casually or without a disposal authority. So as I said before, no one's sneaking in records into the blue bin or trying to surreptitiously delete files out of a holding pen in Microsoft 365. So just going to go over a recent example of physical R&D and transfer that I did with local authority. This is what their secondary storage area looked like at the beginning of the project. So they had a backlog of, I'd say about 20 years worth of physical files, primarily subject files, but covering a wide range of function activities over that time period. And they needed that gone within 2 months because another project was coinciding with this, and the records needed to be out of that area for that to be completed. So I hopped on board and spent a few weeks doing this for them. So this is a look at once they'd been handled by me. I'd made a decision on the record based upon the disposal schedule that they had, storing it in another area and physically putting up post-it notes and notes on the files saying this is either destroy or retain, or we're going to make a call about this later, or we need to talk to another team about what we're going to do with these files because they may be destroyed, but they may need them later and they may actually still be of use to them. So we packed those shelves out pretty quickly, and there was further ones. That wasn't the end of it for sure. Oh, there's more of them there. So blatantly obvious what the decision was in regards to those files, and that no one should really touch them unless that disposal action was being gone over there. So, and then this is what the retained files looked like. So I got to work with my old colleagues at Archive Central again and ship them over to the facility for all the retained files. They're boxed up nice and neatly within the London boxes, just awaiting the official sign off of transfer, and then they're going to be put into the environmentally controlled storage there as archives forevermore. So I thought it'd be handy just go through the process map that I did the local council as well. So just starting at the top there, so it was just conducting retention and disposal. We're creating a master spreadsheet of the sentenced files, which are hopefully already in existence. If you don't have those already, you need to list them first, of course. And then if we're going down the left side, so if there's a destroy action on the record, come up with a records destruction authority form for the classes that need sign off within a specific team. We got input from team leaders on the sentencing of decisions. And then if it was accepted, you get sign off from the executive sponsor. That's also accepted. All the records go in the TIM bin. If there was any no along the process, we went back, had more input, or we reclassified things or resentenced them, and then went through the process again and changed the forms. I don't believe we had any deferral. You would just return those to the record storage, obviously. And then we had retainer transfer, again, the same process. At the end of that, because it was going to Archive Central, and this would apply to public offices sending stuff to Archives New Zealand as well, you need to liaise about the metadata that's being created, and I'll go on about this a little bit further on in the presentation. One of the things that was left off this process map was that you need to determine access decisions before you actually transfer files as well. That's a very important part of it, but it could be seen as another project in its mini project within itself, outside of the scope of this one. That's why I didn't include it on the process map there. So, and this is the actual disposal register that came up with. Now, this is based upon the actual listing of the files that I went through, as well as adding in other columns for the minimum metadata that was required according to the Archives New Zealand guidelines. So there was filling in a little bit of the gaps there, but most of it was done. Over on the right-hand side, probably your most important data is putting down the sentencing date, who it's carried out by, and of course your location control. If you don't know where it is, you can't really find it again or touch it, it might as well not exist. So I always see location control as the most important data that you're going to be putting in. Now, one of the questions I always get from people is, well, public offices have Archives New Zealand to transfer to, but local authorities have no options to do so. Well, they do actually. So once again, going back to the legislation, Section 26 says that the minister may approve a relevant body as an approved repository where public archives may be deposited for keeping. And that's outside of Archives New Zealand, of course. So they can act as an archival material deposit taker. They are responsible for ensuring the proper care and maintenance of the public archives they hold, and they maintain appropriate public access to users and staff. So some of the examples there are the Hawken Library, MTG Hawke's Bay, Tonga Sound and Vision, and I believe Wanganui Regional Museum is one as well. And there's a few others I've missed. Sorry if I've missed yours. So the other option there is there's Archive Central. So that's run by Manawatu Wanganui Local Authority Shared Services. It's unique. It's the only shared services archive in New Zealand, and it has digital and physical archival storage for 9 local authorities, from Ruapehu down to Horowhenua, and including the Hawke's Bay Regional Council and the Horizons Regional Council. So they have over 4,500 linear meters of physical storage. Interesting database stats there. Before I left, we uploaded quite a large amount of aerial photographs and overlays and stuff. That was a pretty cool project. Now, Archive Central conducts your usual business as usual archival functions such as accessioning, arrangement, description, digitization, everything. But for those member councils that want to do larger projects or special projects outside of BAU, they have an option of resourcing, retention and disposal projects, digitization, and anything else that they might want to put forward. The other one coming up is the Hawke's Bay Regional Museum Research and Archive Center. So that's a collaboration between the local councils, Hawke's Bay Museums Trust, which runs MTG Hawke's Bay, and Ngāti Kahanunu Iwi. So there's over 90,000 items with over 6,000 Tonga tuku iho in the Tonga Maori collection. And pretty much on schedule and on budget, I believe, to finish by the end of 2025. So that will be an interesting collaboration there. That's kind of mirrored down here in Christchurch where I am, with Archives New Zealand, and their collaboration with Ngāi Tahu as well. So it's really good to see those kind of partnerships coming along. Now, onto digital transfers. The future is already here. It's been here for quite a long time. People are inquiring about Archives New Zealand receiving digital transfers, and yes, they are taking them. They have some very good advice on there, and they have some very knowledgeable people within the institution that can help any public offices that need to transfer their material. So an interesting fact is that the first board digital transfers occurred in 2009, and they were the political papers of the Honorable Mahara Okeroa, who was an MP. Don't ask me which constitution he was within. But those are the digital files there. A quick search pulled them up really easily. And you can download the Word documents there, no problem if you want to have a look as well. Now, how do you go about digital transfers? Again, talk to Archives New Zealand in the first instance, and read those resources. They have, I've included the link down there for the digital transfer process. If people are interested in that and want to get started on it, and they'd be more than happy to walk you through the process, help you out with the metadata, what's required. and just providing support both before, during, and after the transfer uh, that you would be involved in. So one of the things to remember is that disposal requirements include metadata. Um, some people may actually think of metadata and records as two things, um, but we should be seeing them as part of the official record and treat the object and the metadata together when we're undertaking our retention and disposal and sentencing actions. And it's all part of the principle of creating and maintaining full and accurate records and keeping them together rather than separating them out and treating them differently. So what are the minimum metadata that you have to apply during disposal? Right there. You got your identifiers, name, dates, business activity, creator, data disposal, authority governing the disposal, and the person or role carrying out the disposal action. So that you can refer back to them if they screwed up in any way. And again, back to this picture, just shows those minimum metadata requirements and how they look within a schedule when you are carrying out that sentencing. So as I mentioned before, this past week, there's been the report on the state of government record keeping 2023-24. So it's good to see incremental progress every year. It would be good to see a lot more public offices in the managing and above category. But we'll take the incremental progress where we can, I guess. So there has been an increase in percentage of organizations carrying out authorized destruction of physical and digital information. And you can see from that little graph there how it has increased over the past 3-4 years. And I would expect that, so the latest cohort for 2023, oh, sorry, 2024, 2025 have already been audited. I believe they've Archives New Zealand's gone back to them with recommendations, and they're starting to mull those over. And hopefully we'll see again more improvement going into next year as well when that next report on the state of government keeping comes out. But we still have a long way to go. So it's really good to see that public offices have a current organization specific disposal authority, and they're engaging on that front. But for much further down the list, implementation of those disposal decisions, as well as transferring to Archives New Zealand, are at the very bottom. So it's the follow through on those actions that we're lagging a bit behind in. Now, within the annual record keeping report this year, I noticed a big drop, about 15% in the amount of IM professionals that were engaged within the public sector, unfortunately. And resourcing and capability has taken a big hit. So it's not a surprise that there are a lot of public offices with updated R&D schedules and having that that register and schedule within the organization, but having those follow through processes just aren't part of the business as usual um, part of jobs at the moment because of those resourcing shortages, unfortunately. So I hope that will correct over the next year or two. Final recommendations for managing our digital information. So thanks to Michael Upton, he added a little bit to this presentation. He's a bit more on the current digital records knowledge base than I am at the moment. So he wrote that have sentence aggregations based on the highest value. So when we're looking through R&D, we should be looking at the folders or everything about a case in a database, trying not to go too granular, especially if your local authority or public office is a large, you could be in a job forever and a day. doing that. So it's about right sizing retention and disposal as you start the project and having a think about that before you engage in it. We want to leave the conversations about file formats, data to the experts. So within the standards and guidelines that Archives New Zealand have, it's format agnostic. Our focus is on the subject material and the functions and activities that our public office or local authority are undertaking rather than the formats. It doesn't matter whether it's on VHS, CD, USB, or born digital. We should be treating the subject material rather than the format. And digital archives can be made openly available for download from Archives New Zealand. So you want to have a think about the kind of information that you're transferring over and a discussion to Archives New Zealand, Archive Central, or whoever you are transferring that information and records to, and knowing the access decisions and restrictions around them before you do so. So having an open conversation about that. And finally, I'd love to end on an image and a funny note. So retention disposal, because even the chief archivist can't archive everything, including your excuses. So if you've been thinking about doing R&D, get onto it. Anna Hero would love to see you transferring, especially more born digital material over to Archives New Zealand and getting us up into that managing and above for the public offices scoring within the IMMA framework. Right. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. So we'll just take questions now. I'll stop sharing my screen as well. I'll hand back over to Alison.
Yep. Okay. Anybody with questions? You can either put them in the chat or raise your hand. Yeah. Who have we got? Anybody with any questions? You just put your microphone on and just ask. That would be great. It's like you stunned everyone into silence there.
Yes, please.
Oh, brilliant. Great. Fantastic.
Lucy from Auckland.
Hi, Lucy.
With CCOs,
yeah.
Are you getting a lot of echo?
No, I can hear you fine.
Okay. I might just...
CCOs, yeah.
Getting a lot of it, yeah.
Yeah.
For Auckland Council, for instance,
yeah.
They have an archives function, and that archives is open to the public. Is it sufficient for CCOs to transfer their archival material to that archives? Because then it makes it available for public access.
Yes. Yeah. I assume that the Auckland archive that you would be transferring to would be environmentally controlled, and you've already said that they are allowing public access and managing those requests and everything. Yeah, yeah. So that's an absolutely fine place to be transferring your files. You just need to do your R&D, document everything, and have the conversations as I talked about earlier.
Super. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Anybody else would like to ask a question? I'll put one in the chat. Oh, here we are from Olivia. So thinking about the highest values for aggregation, in a different but related vein, what are your views on the use of broad classes in a DA, a rolled up or big bucket methodology, recognising this is the other end of the issue? Thank you, Olivia.
Oh, interesting question there. As I said before, it kind of comes down to your resourcing and capability, and right sizing an R&D project for your organization. Now, so hold on, let's see, what are you using? You said broad classes in it, yeah. So the GDA itself, the 6 and 7 are already pretty high tier kind of thoughts around retention and disposal, and the aim of it is to allow public offices and local authorities to be able to dispose of material relatively quickly and efficiently. So unless you come up with a modified schedule or disposal register within your public office or local authority, it's a pretty good tool to be implementing already. Having said that, the T2 schedule, as I said before, is meant to be flexible and modified by organizations so that it can better fit within there and make your job a lot easier. So if you do have a T2 schedule or you're looking to update it, it's really worth having a sit down, reading all of the information that Algom provides around that, and then having discussions with all the team leaders, execs within your organization about their responsibilities, your responsibilities, and how you should treat records. Because you might get some great information that comes out of those discussions that you didn't know about HR or finance, where you don't actually have any expertise or speciality, and where you may have just said, oh, the default's fine to use within the template. So if you do undertake that, it's really worth engaging the whole organization for that. If you do have the capability to do that, I would recommend that.
Okay. Oh, got another one from Iona from Stats New Zealand. What have you seen work well for approval and sign-off needs for GDA disposal? Should there be a records management oversight / approval, or could this be owned more by the wider business?
All right, good question again. So I haven't really been involved with public office retention disposal. My specialties with local government. In saying that, in general, you should definitely have management oversight. Your executive sponsor, at a minimum, should be engaging with the process and having, if you look back at the process map, they should be having that say before you are doing retain, destroy, deferral, transfer, anything like that. And I've found that it is worth having conversation with team leaders or general managers about what you are doing with their records, because in the end, it is their records. Their teams are creating this information for specific functions and activities, and it's obviously important to the organization. So it's always worth talking, usually worth talking to more and more people. The more information you'll get, the better decisions you can end up having.
Right. Thank you. Anybody else who has a question they'd like to ask? No. Oh,
Yeah, that's very true, Lucy. Yeah, the creators and users are valuable to consult with. The other point of that is when you do consult with the people that are creating this information, you also get more buy-in from them. And any other training or relationships that you want to build with those people, it's a good starting point sometimes to have those conversations and build on them from there as well.
Great, thank you. I guess one of the things that we're looking at is how we can maybe put more ownership of that disposal back on the business, so it doesn't always feel like you have to always go to the records people to delete, even just things like your emails or things like that. So yeah, it was just interesting to sort of see how decentralized can you go with some of those GDA elements, especially around like GDA 7, where it is very facilitative and everything, or like, yeah, where is that boundary between being able to decentralize or still having that like ownership by the records team?
Yeah. What you're starting to see is especially with ECMs and EDRMS and everything, is that A lot of organizations are starting to think about auto classification, the use of AI to standardize and automate a lot of these functions. So in a perfect world, you would have your classification or tagging done at the point of creation of record spreadsheet, whatever it may be. And throughout its life cycle, it's just the metadata is being managed. When it comes to the end of it, that R&D would be done either automated or done by AI, and then you have a sign off within it. So maybe a little bit of old school thinking, but IAM should always have, a say before sign off is done at the very least for that. But who knows with the future and how smart AI will get and everything.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to ask a question, comment or ask a question in the chat? Right. Okay. I think we're probably okay. I think that's probably it. Nobody seems to have any more questions. I'd just like to say thank you very much indeed. Excuse me.
Sorry, I was just trying to find my cursor to unmute.
I hope you find your cursor, Lucy.
Yeah, found it. Yeah.
Excellent.
All the guidance around GDAs and how to use them.
Yeah.
Remind us that they're to be used for corporate records.
Yeah.
And yet I find that GDA 7 to do with facilitative and transitory records. It makes sense to apply it to just about any record, even if it's core business. So if we've got somebody's working file and for some strange reason, like for instance, when we had an office move and they just all got bundled up and stored, and then years later we get to review them, and we find that they are simply their personal working notes.
Yeah.
Then my instinct is to treat them and refer to the GDA 7 and say, well, these were facilitative. This was useful for a period of time where they were creating something else. And yet, if it's to do with core business, the guidance around GDA 7 would seem to say to us, don't use this. What are your thoughts about that?
So to use GDA 6 as well? Because GDA 6 more refers to the core business, whereas GDA 7 is the transitory records. Do you use them in conjunction with each other?
Yes. But
yeah.
I guess my question is more to do with the guidance notes around using GDAs 6 and 7 seem to say that we are only meant to use them for common corporate records and not for core business.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Where do you work, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I'm signing in today from my one job, which is Auckland Libraries, but my question arises from my other job, which is at Watercare.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So it's a council-controlled organization. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have a specific disposal authority?
We're working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I would say that would be of a lot more use than the GDAs for you, especially since you're local authority. And you're already on the right track if you go about modifying that specifically to Watercare and how your function activities go through there, because it will, if you do modify it, it will definitely cover those corporate records, those core ones.
Yeah, I notice we've been also referring to the Auckland Council disposal schedule while we're working on our own. And that also refers to things that need to be retained and things that can be disposed, but there's no reference to working notes, for instance. And so
Yep.
it seems to me that we don't actually have anything that describes what we're supposed to do with people's transitory information.
Yeah, in general, referring back to like T2 schedule, you want to keep the final, as an example, final reports that you have for major projects. And there is a major projects specific default within the schedule that you could use as well. And you can, the other modifiable part of that is that you can differentiate between significant projects and lower tier ones, so that you may end up keeping some above a certain dollar value or resourcing, that kind of stuff. Whatever
I
you
think I'm
set
more
as well.
talking
Yeah.
about people's personal notes that simply got
Yeah.
filed away somewhere and stored because people didn't know what to do with them.
Right, yeah. And those end up usually being working copies, where in general you would, just keep the final publications. But yeah, again, it comes down to your specific disposal register, and having a good think about and dig through those records first and foremost, and pulling out the context and then making a decision on them. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
No problem. Oh, update from Archive Central. They're over 5,000 linear meters now, so they just keep growing, which is really good to see.
Any more questions, comments? Okay. All right. I'll just say thank you very much indeed, Evan, for your wonderful presentation, which I'm sure was of great interest to everybody here. And our next ARANZ webinar is going to be on the 30th of May, and that will be Susan Pryor from, here we go, Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand on their information management journey. So that's on the 30th of May, that's a Friday. I'll be sending out on the listservs the sort of details for that and the Zoom link as well. So I'd just like to thank everyone for coming today, and thanks again, Evan, and hopefully see you all at the end of this month. Thanks a lot. Okay, bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.